The Jewish Channel's Week in Review. Shimon Peres' failed attempt to free Jonathan Pollard, fake eviction notices on a college campus upset Jewish groups, ex-Hasidic Jews share their stories, and more of the Jewish news that's changing your world right now on this episode of the Week in Review. Hello, happy Passover, and welcome to the Jewish Channel's Week in Review. I'm Rebecca Honig-Friedman, filling in for Stephen I. Weiss. While Jews have spent the past week celebrating liberation from slavery in Egypt, imprisoned Israeli spy Jonathan Pollard was once again denied his freedom. After Pollard was reportedly rushed to the hospital on the eve of Passover, Israeli President Shimon Peres sent a letter to the White House on Monday requesting clemency for Pollard in light of his failing health. Peres is scheduled to meet with President Obama in June to receive the Presidential Medal of Freedom. But Peres' request was denied on Tuesday, with a White House official telling reporters, quote, "There is no change in our position." Pollard has served 26 years of a life sentence. Meanwhile, a prank by a pro-Palestinian student group at Florida Atlantic University has Jewish students and advocacy groups up in arms this week. In an attempt to call attention to the eviction of Palestinians from their homes, the group Students for Justice in Palestine posted fake eviction notices on the doors of over 200 students in university housing. Mimicking an official document, the notices included the Palm Beach County seal and the official university housing stamp, reading, quote, "Eviction notice. We regret to inform you that your home is scheduled for demolition shortly. If you do not leave, we reserve the right to destroy your home. Anyone left inside is not our responsibility." While the fine print explained the students' message about Palestinians, some of the students who received the notices were reportedly fooled and really thought they were being evicted from student housing. Others were offended by what they perceived as the anti-Zionist and anti-Semitic rhetoric of the flyers. One student told the Florida Jewish Journal she was considering the act, quote, "a hate crime." Florida Atlantic has removed the flyers and issued a statement saying the postings, quote, "did not comply with the policies of the university housing and residential life." The university is opening an investigation into how the official university housing stamp got onto the flyers. In happier news for the Jewish state, an Israeli scientist was recently named Europe's top young researcher. Naama Geva-Zatorsky, 34, won the International UNESCO L'Oreal Prize for Women in Science. A biologist at the Weizmann Institute, Geva-Zatorsky studies probiotics, or good bacteria, and their impact on human health. She's doing postdoctoral work at Harvard University. Another Jewish woman who's been making headlines lately is Deborah Feldman, the author of the controversial memoir Unorthodox, The Scandalous Rejection of My Hasidic Roots. Feldman appears as a guest on this month's episode of The Salon, which is now airing in the TJC Original Series category, and she stuck around after the show for an exclusive one-on-one interview with our own Meredith Gansman.
That was Deborah Feldman then, and this is Deborah Feldman now.
For the first time in my life, I'm completely allowed to be 100% myself.
Born and raised in the Hasidic Satmar community of Williamsburg, Brooklyn, Feldman fled the community 2 years ago at the age of 23, taking her young son with her. She divorced her husband from an arranged marriage and settled on Manhattan's Upper East Side. Her new tell-all memoir, Unorthodox, The Scandalous Rejection of My Hasidic Roots, has been on the New York Times bestseller list since its release. Raising her child in secular society and speaking out for those who have left Hasidic and other ultra-religious communities is a very different life than the one Feldman once knew. Isla Fader is the author of Mitzvah Girls, which explores the lives of Hasidic girls and young women.
Young girls have really active social lives. They're in girl-only schools. Girls have a lot of responsibility in their homes. If they're older, they're responsible for their younger siblings often. They help their mothers a lot. They're basically learning, at the same time that they're learning Hebrew and Yiddish at school and regular secular subjects, they're also learning how to be Hasidic women, eventually responsible for their own homes. And
Feldman described that former life as restrictive and said she never fit into the community.
It felt like everyone around me was just not questioning. They were automatons, and I was constantly questioning, and of course I thought there was something wrong with me for doing that.
And more than unsure of her faith, Feldman said she also felt unsafe as a Satmar, as she heard of child abuse in her community.
People seemed willing to let the abuse continue, And no one seemed to think it could be my kid in that position. And I thought that. I thought it could be my son one day, someone victimizing him. And I was afraid, and I was desperate. And it was one of the reasons I decided to leave.
But it was ultimately a serious car accident that ignited her leaving the community.
I rented a car. I just impulsively grabbed as many possessions as I could carry and drove over the Tappan Zee Bridge with my son, and I never went back. It was really that simple.
Deborah Feldman's story may sound unique, but every year over 600 ultra-Orthodox and Hasidic people turn to one organization in order to facilitate similar paths of change. The nonprofit organization Footsteps seeks to help Orthodox and Hasidic Jews who have chosen to leave their communities or who are considering taking that step. Executive Director Lonnie Santo explained how Footsteps supports those grappling with this change.
Often we're slowing it down a little bit for them. So if someone comes and says, I've had it, I want to leave home, they're talking to one of our social workers, they're saying, okay, I'm gonna leave home. We're like, really? So tell me about that. Like, where are you gonna go? Do you have money to support yourself? Really helping them think through what are the consequences of those actions.
I had no idea what I was gonna do once I get out, but I knew I'm not staying in.
To see how other ex-Hasidic Jews deal with leaving their communities and starting anew, tune into the full broadcast version of the Week in Review.
Thank you, Meredith. In other Passover news, Kosher for Passover Coke enthusiasts in California had one less thing to celebrate this year. Because of new state laws regulating toxic chemicals, Coke was forced to change the way it manufactures one of its ingredients, caramel color, and the change rendered the beverage unfit for Passover consumption. Coke manufacturing in other states remained the same, however, and fortunately for kosher consumers, some stores in California reportedly were able to stock limited amounts of Kosher for Passover Coke, which has cane sugar instead of corn syrup, that they imported from other states. Speaking of imports, the chief rabbi of Rome visited the United States recently, and Christian Needon has that story.
The chief rabbi of Rome was recently in New York to give his unique take on the recent history of Jewish-Vatican relations in a lecture at City University of New York Center for Jewish Studies. The rabbi's talk was presented with a slideshow containing several Vatican documents describing Catholic doctrine regarding Jews, and he noted how such dogma undermines a productive dialogue between members of each faith.
Religious discussion and relations are not political relations. We are not sitting on the table and say, okay, I give back this, I give up to this, and you give up to this, and to make a deal. This is not the way. If you want to have good relations, we must distinguish what is the belief and what is the behavior.
On that point, he addressed the question of whether Jews should concern themselves with changing Catholic theology's approach toward their faith.
As Jews, we are not ready to accept that someone will come and says you have to change your ideology, your thinking, or your beliefs. We cannot accept this. So it is also unfair that we ask the same thing to them.
But he quickly added that Catholics must respect and not interfere with Jewish practice, especially those Catholics who try to convert Jews.
That the priest go around and find a Jew and try to convert him, this will be absolutely unacceptable. But if the result is that this is the theoretical hope for the end of the times, and in the meantime I can discuss, talk friendly with the priest of any other Catholic who respects me in my faith, why not?
To hear more about the recent history of Jewish-Vatican relations from the Chief Rabbi of Rome, please tune in to the full broadcast edition of the Week in Review.
Thank you, Christian. That's all for this week. From all of us here at the Jewish Channel, take care.
The Jewish Channel is available on cable. Time Warner Cable Channel 528, IO Optimum Channel 291, RCN Channel 268, Bright House Channel 330, Verizon Fios Channel 900, Cox Channel 1, Frontier Communications, and now on Comcast Cable in the on-demand menu under Premium Channels. For more information, visit tjctv.com.